had any number of the 99 that are less than triple digit. I do not know what it means, but it is just a thought-provoking incident. And to give you just a little clue that Bush might be a member of the Masons, I once had a phone call from a psychologist in Silver Springs, Maryland, who told me that he was a member of a Masonic lodge in Maryland with George Bush, and that they attended lodge meetings together. He would not put the statement in writing for me. However, I cannot confirm that he is a Mason or that George Bush was a Mason. I can tell you that the Masonic Lodge has stated officially that George Bush is not a Mason. This is the letter from the Masons dated December the 16th, 1991, that stated that George Bush is not a Mason. But let me give you some more evidence that George Bush knows precisely what this New World Order is that I'm talking about. This is an article that appeared in my Arizona Daily Star, our morning newspaper, on January the 3rd, 1989. The headline reads, Millennium Group expects Bush at 99 Egypt Bash. A millennium is, of course, a 1,000-year period, so this article was telling us that there is a group of people that have formed to celebrate the beginning of the next 1,000-year period. And to show you that this organization is real, this is the copy of their application. A friend of mine joined their group to monitor their activities. So you can join it as well. All you have to do is send in your dues. The article reported President-elect Bush is spending this New Year's holiday at Camp David, Maryland, but in 10 years he may be in Egypt. Organizers of the Millennium Society say he's, by the way, notice that the group is called the Millennium Society, say he's already committed to ushering in the next century at the Great Pyramid of Cheops at Giza. George Bush is going to be at the Great Pyramid of Cheops near Cairo, Egypt, to welcome in the millennium starting on January the 1st, the year 2000. The article says that George Bush sent the group a telegram that read, Barbara and I wish you the best of luck in the next year, and we're looking forward to your celebration in Egypt in 1999. Notice that he acknowledged that he will be there on New Year's Eve, 1999, to welcome in the new year on the next morning. And he's going to be there at the Great Pyramid of Giza, the temple of initiation into Lucifer worship. This is an article that appeared in the Wall Street Journal of June the 27th, 1988, that confirms the story placed in the Arizona Daily Star. And this is an article that appeared in Time magazine in 1992 that talked about the great event, so it is true. George Bush will be at the Great Pyramid of Giza near Cairo, Egypt, for the beginning of a 1,000-year millennium, a period that he chose to call the 1,000 Points of Light. And he will be there for a very specific purpose, one that is both shocking and scary. I will discuss that reason in the next session. Let me summarize all that we've learned so far. The New World Order is coming to the world on January the 1st, the year 2000. It will last for 1,000 years, and George Bush will be there to see the beginning of it. George Bush will be standing near the pyramid, and at midnight, he will watch the planet Jupiter light up, signifying that there is now a second God in the universe, and that Lucifer will be taking his rightful place in ruling the affairs of men on this earth. This will be a symbolic act, signifying that the eye of the sun god is going to land somehow on the top of the pyramid and take up residency inside. John Anthony West, in his book Serpent in the Sky, one we looked at before, says this: since the closing of the temple at the end of the Pharaonic Empire and the beginning of the Christian era, man has been without the essential guide of the sacred science as a means of becoming truly human. That means that somehow the temple will be reopened for Lucifer worship on January the 1st, the year 2000 A.D. Manly P. Hall adds one more clue that the pyramid will be reopened soon. He wrote in his book entitled The Lost Keys of Freemasonry, enter the temple in reverence, for it is in truth the dwelling place of a great spirit, the spirit of Masonry. This is why George Bush is going to be at the Great Pyramid. That pyramid will be opened again as a temple of Lucifer worship, and George Bush will be there. But how can George Bush be involved in a Luciferic conspiracy that lasting 1,000 years? He loves children. How can George Bush be involved in a 1,000-year Luciferic conspiracy? He loves parades. He couldn't be involved. But all of the evidence is that he knows precisely what he's doing and what he's saying. He knows that the New World Order is Luciferic, and he looks forward to their bringing us a 1,000-year reign of this government. Quite simply, George Bush knows that the New World Order is Luciferic. Now let me bring it all together to show you further evidence that he knows. I believe George Bush knows. He's looking forward, as I said. This is a picture of George Bush. I'm sorry, I got one slide behind. George Bush does know, and now we're going to see a picture of George Bush speaking at the United Nations on October the 1st, 1990. This is a transcript of that speech as printed in the New York Times newspaper on October the 2nd, 1990, and this is what George Bush told the United Nations about the year 2000 and a coming millennium. As we look to the future, the calendar offers up a convenient milestone, a signpost by which to measure our progress as a community of nations. The year 2000 marks a turning point, beginning not only the turn of the decade, but not only the turn of the century, but also the turn of the millennium. He said this about the New World Order: the United Nations can help bring about a new day. He went on, it is in our hands to press forward to cap. Notice that he used the word cap, like he would cap the pyramid with a missing capstone. So it is in our hands to press forward to cap an historic movement towards a new world order. This is an article written by George Bush in the Parade magazine of July the 2nd, 1989. I'm going to read the paragraph that I can't show you there, but it's in this little paragraph here in yellow. Actually, in blue, forgive me. This is the close-up of that page just to show you that I'm not misquoting him in this quote. This is what George Bush wrote. I'm going to read it all the way through first, and then I'll go back over it one thought at a time. George Bush wrote, that desire for freedom from tyranny inspired the world and still does. Look on the back of any dollar bill and you'll see it. The Great Seal of the United States bears the motto Novus Ordo Seclorum, meaning a new order of the ages. Now let me comment on each thought in the article. Mr. Bush talked about that desire for freedom from tyranny. Remember that this conspiracy believes that religion is tyranny, and that they want to replace religion with the thought that man can rule the universe with the use of reason. So it is possible that George Bush is talking about the need to destroy religion, just like the communists, the Illuminati, the socialists, the Masons, and the New Age religion have all dreamed. And I think that's possible. Look on the back of any dollar bill, Mr. Bush wrote, the Great Seal of the United States bears the motto Novus Ordo Seclorum. So here he is acknowledging that the New World Order is shown on the back of our dollar bill in the phrase Novus Ordo Seclorum. Then he goes on to define it a little differently than I do. He calls it the New Order of the Ages. I'll accept that definition instead of mine, which is the New World Order, because George Bush elsewhere talked about the New World Order. So it is fair to conclude that George Bush knows about the New World Order. George Bush knows about the Novus Ordo Seclorum. George Bush knows about the 1,000-year millennium. And he knows that it all starts on the morning of January the 1st, the year 2000. He has told us in his own words. Now to end this lecture, let me ask the question that all of America should be asking: what is the solution? As I've said before, and as I have attempted to approve as an historian, this conspiracy is Luciferian. It is supported by a religious belief in Lucifer, also called Satan the Devil. This conspiracy has been causing the death of billions of people on this earth for nearly 6,000 years. This conspiracy is intrinsically evil. It does not have men's best interest at heart, and moral people must do all within their power to expose it and stop it. So here's the answer. I think it was someone like St. Thomas Aquinas who wrote, "We are to work as if it's all up to us and pray as if it was all up to God." So here are the two answers. We are to work to expose it, and we are to pray for God to end it. And the answer is in the Bible. The New Testament says this in Ephesians 5:11, "And have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them." The word reprove also means expose. So we are not to cooperate with the works of this conspiracy, and we are to spend our lives in exposing their works. For about 13 hours, I have been trying to show you that I have uncovered a gigantic conspiracy in the world, and that this conspiracy is headed by a religion based on a belief in Lucifer the devil. I've tried to expose this conspiracy as an historian, but the answer is a religious one. This is a group of us at the 33rd Degree Masonic Temple in Washington, D.C. in September of 1990. Notice that we prayed by actually laying hands on the temple. We prayed that God would loose this nation from the bondage of Freemasonry, because if the bonds are not broken, we will get Lucifer's 1,000 points of light. So once again, very simply, the answer is work and prayer. Because the Creator God of the Bible has told us this in the Old Testament. 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 14. "If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and forgive their sin, and will heal their land." Notice that the Creator God has told us we have a 4-step program to save this country. We are to humble ourselves. This means that we must acknowledge that the Creator God exists in the universe, and acknowledge Him as the Lord of the universe, not us. We are to pray to that God. Number 3, we are to seek His face. And number 4, we are to turn from our wicked ways. If we do this, the Creator God promises to do 3 things in return. He promises that He will hear from heaven, that He will forgive our sins, and then number 3, He promises to heal our land. A good summary of this problem was offered by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, a Russian defector. He saw the very same New World Order while he lived in Russia. He lived in it for all of his life before he defected to this nation, and he warned us. Over a half-century ago, meaning about the time of 1917, the time of the Communist Revolution in his native Russia, while I was still a child, I recall hearing a number of old people offer the following explanation for the great disasters that had befallen Russia. He was referring to the great disasters of the Communist Revolution in Russia that killed as many as 42 million people. In other words, he was asking these people who lived through the Communist Revolution why it had happened. He explained that he received this answer from those he talked to. They told him that man has forgotten God. That's why all this has happened. That's why all of this has happened in America. Quite simply, we have forgotten God. Now, if you do not know God, may I humbly suggest that you get to know Him as soon as possible, because He is looking for you, but you have to find Him. The Masons claim that man cannot know God. Carl Claudy, a 33rd degree Mason, wrote this on page 157 of his book entitled Introduction to Freemasonry. We cannot prove God. He wrote, proof is the result of logic, and logic is the process of the mind. They say that man's reason leads him away from God, and I say that man's reason leads him to God. So if my little pamphlet entitled God Exists can help you find the Creator God through the use of science, logic, and reason, please let me know by writing to the address that'll follow at the end of this lecture. One of the first quotes we read in this lecture was this one. Pierre-Joseph Proudhon, a socialist, wrote, "Our principle is atheism in religion, anarchy in politics, and no property in the economic sphere, and what